Hello, this is Eric Morse Eskenazi. I'm the host of the Iraq Dispatches podcast. Thanks for tuning in to this latest episode featuring an interview with Frankie Raye, singer and songwriter. Frankie is based in Florida, and she performs practically every day of the week, sometimes multiple times. So if you're down that area of the country, definitely check her out. And also her latest single, Theodora, is available now on major streaming platforms, and she's also currently working on a new album. So I hope you enjoy this interview with her. Hello, thanks for listening to the Erratic Dispatches podcast. We'll be back shortly after a brief break. Hello, I've been using Anchor.fm now for about almost a year for the podcast Erratic Dispatches, which is distributed through Anchor.fm. It's completely free to use, very easy, and any audio that you upload or record through the website, it will be you can use it to organize your audio files, and once your podcasts are ready to submit, it will be available to stream within at least 8 different streaming sites. What were your inspirations to start beginning a career in singing and also songwriting?
So I was fortunate enough to grow up in a musical family. My mother was in a cover band, since, she was a teenager, and I had aunts and uncles who were always in cover bands, and my brother was pretty successful with music. So I was really lucky to just grow up seeing everyone around me do music. So I think when I was young, I thought everyone did it. It's just something you do. It wasn't like it was, oh, I want to do that one day. I just thought, well, yeah, of course, doesn't everyone? So it just, I think it wasn't until around high school when I thought that I might actually want to do it as a career, because I started understanding the business side of it more. My brother was in a pretty successful band called Foxy Shazam. They had a few hits out, and I remember I would always just pick his brain about the business side of it. So he was a huge inspiration for me to really start going into it as a career. And then for songwriting, it's so weird. I always kind of pick on myself. I'm really bad with words. When I have conversations with people, I have a tendency to kind of stutter and lose my train of thought all the time. So I feel like, especially when I'm faced with confrontation or where I feel like I have to defend myself, I get so tongue-tied, and I just don't, it's almost like I lose my words. So songwriting was really the only way, especially growing up throughout my teenage years, where I could actually express what I was feeling, because I wasn't just talking to someone through conversation. I was applying so many other elements: music, emotion, sound, just all of these other things. So songwriting, the inspiration was really just not having any other way to express myself. It was the easiest way to do it, most natural way.
When you were a teenager, did you always perform solo, or were you in bands, and playing different music genres?
So I was mostly solo as far as guitar playing and songwriting. I was pretty much by myself, but I was, however, very involved in choir and show choir and musical theater. In fact, musical theater was really going to be my career focus before I even decided to do music. I really wanted to do musical theater. So I usually just played solo, but I was lucky enough to have an amazing high school with really great art programs. So I was able to have that, kind of community collaborative experience.
And there were any particular singer-songwriters that really influenced you?
Yeah, so growing up, I mean, of course, when I was younger, I just listened to the stuff that my mom listened to, which luckily was, amazing music. There's Joni Mitchell and Ricky Lee Jones and Fleetwood Mac, Todd Rundgren, Sales and Crofts, amazing, Billy Joel, just amazing songwriters. And then, of course, in the 90s, Jewel and Alanis Morissette, and Sheryl Crow, they were influences. And I think when I got a little bit older, I think I started, I guess, going more toward the moodier artists, Fiona Apple or Ani DeFranco, one second, and even Alanis Morissette was, definitely moody. But I most of my influences, not so much with guitar playing and singing, but with lyrics. I was really inspired by again, Alanis Morissette and Annie DeFranco, because their way with words was just so good. Like the way they would explain things in their songs, I was like, wow, that's so creative. So those were mostly my influences.
And with like the albums you released so far, like do you produce everything or do you collaborate with other producers?
So for my first, let's see, so my first album was completely an all acoustic, independent album. This musician friend who I met literally came to my house and brought his laptop, and we recorded it like that. That was called Chapters, and that was the first thing I did. And I didn't really release that professionally, like not on Spotify or anything like that. And, you know, I kind of just sold it independently at my shows. But I wrote all the songs, and, you know, that one was all acoustic. And then the second album is called A Thing or Two About a Dream. And that was my first, I guess, more professional release, where I actually went through a distributor and everything like that. And I was, with that album, it was more collaborative. I mean, I still wrote all the songs, but I actually had a band with me by that point in my life. I knew musicians who could come in and help me, you know, develop the song. A really good friend of mine who I played music with, Mike Malloy, he was just an amazing keyboard player, pianist, and he would help me develop a lot of my songs, and he taught me a lot about structure. And then for my third album, Brave, which was released in 2019, that one was even more collaborative because I was working with, you know, a producer who did that as a living. That's his job, to, you know, produce people. So he really kind of helped me along and helped me tweak some of the songs. And I had, you know, a really good musician friend of mine who mastered the album. He kind of helped with some things as well. So lately it's been more collaborative, which is good.
And I guess right now you're working on another release?
I am, yeah.
Great.
Still in the very early phases of it. I have this habit of just thinking everything I do is terrible. So it's like, I'll write a song and then I'm like, I don't like it. Scratch that one. I'll write another one and I'll like it for a week. I'm like, scratch that one. So I'm in the process now of digging out some of the ones that I threw away. And me and this producer who worked with me on my last album, Brave, he's kind of helping me, you know, just kind of say like, well, what don't you like about this? Like, do you want to, you know, like how can we fix this? I think it's a good song. We don't need to scrap it. We can, you know, fix this in some way. So that's exciting, but it's still very, very early phases.
So I noticed like on your website and your life schedule, like you perform practically like every day of the week, like multiple times a lot. I guess that's really great practice for you because you really strengthen your skills as a singer-songwriter. Do you mind talking about like the different venues and like Tampa Bay where you're based at, like different places, and like mention about like what they're like, the different environments that you play in?
Yeah, so it's really interesting to think about it because the environments do change from not just bar to bar, but city to city, you know. Like when I play down along the beaches, you know, we've got Siesta Key and Bradenton, Anna Maria Island, and down there it's definitely a beachy vacation vibe. You know, I play a lot of, you know, beach country stuff, Jimmy Buffett, and, you know, things like that. And it's definitely more loose and, you know, fun. And then there are some places like in downtown St. Pete where it's a little bit more, I don't want to say like hipstery, but the crowd's a little bit younger. They maybe appreciate original music a little bit more because, you know, I don't know, they're kind of into that, discovering new music. It's a younger crowd. It's kind of like a tastemaker kind of crowd. And then up, you know, I go up a little bit north in some areas that aren't really vacation spots, but those areas seem to be more, you know, hometown kind of vibe, where I play a little bit more country stuff and a little bit more slower songs. So, and then of course when I play hotels, they want a loungy kind of bluesy sound. So it definitely, being able to play at all these places, like you said, definitely strengthens, you know, not just skills as a singer-songwriter, but just as a performer. And, you know, I mean, I don't even get nervous really playing anymore unless it's, you know, unless I'm with a band, because then it's like, we all got to work together. You know, you can't mess up. When it's just me, I can mess up and then I cover myself. It's fine, you know. But yeah, playing all these places, it, you know, it really does. It helps your, I mean, everything, stage presence, communication skills, talking to customers about things, having to have all these things on your mind while still entertaining the crowd. You got to pay attention, like, oh, these people seem to really enjoy this kind of music and they're the only ones paying attention, so I'm going to do more music like that. Or there's just a lot of cool things that you learn and pick up about people in general too
Hmm.
when you play that much.
When you play live, are you like very specific about like, or do you have preferences about like the type of mics to use, or like the type of environment you play in? Like you prefer a certain environment because the acoustics are better, like the sound environment, you know?
Yeah, so I mean, I've used my Shure 58
Hmm.
mic, and I've had
Hmm.
the same setup. I have a very, very simple setup. I mean, I have one QSC
Hmm.
speaker, one little
Hmm.
Mackie mixer, and I
Hmm.
plug, I mean, I don't even do looping. I don't even have a
Hmm.
tuning pedal. So my
Hmm.
setup is, I'm not really I mean, I love my QSC speaker. That's like
Hmm.
the only speaker I want to have. And then the board that I have is really easy to use. It's been Old Faithful. But yeah, there's each venue you play, it's crazy. I'll have my board, the settings will be at the same place as they were, the previous night,
Hmm.
and then I get into this new venue and it's like doesn't sound anything like it
Hmm.
did the
Hmm.
night before.
Hmm.
So I have to remember certain places like, oh yeah, this place I should probably, it's really
Hmm.
booming, so I probably don't need that many effects. Or
Hmm.
this place is outside, so everything's going to sound drier, so I should probably boost up the effects. And there's just all kinds of little things that you have to remember as far as the atmosphere and
Hmm.
and the gear that you use, what's going to work and what isn't going to work.
Do you ever like? Do you have like a mini home studio, like where sometimes you just kind of play around with different ideas or songs you're working on or demoing?
Oh, I wish. I wish. That's been my goal. I mean, I know during the shutdowns, my boyfriend and I played around with GarageBand a lot,
Hmm.
because I have a MacBook.
Hmm.
And but I don't really have. I wish I did. And he and I together have kind of thought like, oh, we should get a little small recording setup where we can
Hmm.
just make stuff and just have it completely set up in the room so we can go in there whenever we want. And we even have a spare room that we call the music room, but
Hmm.
basically where we just put all our gear whenever we get done with
Hmm.
shows. But I have plans to have nothing fancy, but just a little setup. I have plans to start that.
Great. Like when you play at the different venues, do you like to record your own sessions just to kind of hear how it sounds, or or if you're working on a new song, just to see how it how it sounds, and how how it plays with the crowd, like how they react to it.
Definitely with originals for sure.
Hmm. Hmm.
In fact, I go through my old recordings and I hear, like for example, the last song I released, Theodora. I've got like 6 different recordings of that on my phone from my live shows.
Hmm.
I have ones where it's just me. I have one where it's me and my drummer. I have one where it's
Hmm.
me and the bassist. I have one where
Hmm.
it's, me but in a different key. So I do all these things, and it's mostly just because I want to listen to it over and over so I can, really get to know the song better, I guess. And then again, yeah, to hear how the crowd plays out. Or sometimes I'll record it through SoundCloud, and I'll like
Yeah.
release it through SoundCloud, and that's kind of like hey everyone, check out my SoundCloud. I just, here's a new song, and it's
Hmm.
like, and people kind of like that because, well, I don't know if everyone's like this, but I personally love listening to early drafts of
Hmm.
songs. I just absolutely love that. I love listening to like first cuts of albums and the song sounds completely different than what the
Hmm.
final cut was. I love listening to that kind of stuff. So, I kind of pretty much do that with myself a
Hmm.
lot when I write new songs.
And I noticed like on your different your bio that you like played in Anaheim, California at the House of Blues.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
was that was such a fun opportunity, man. The every year, we go to my drummer and I and a few other music friends. We go to a convention in Anaheim called the NAM Show,
Hmm.
National Association of Music
Hmm.
Merchants, and it's this giant
Hmm.
convention, with all kinds of music people, and it's amazing. So I went there in 2018 for the first year, and that was me just kind of getting to know how everything worked. And then the second year, my drummer and I, we got to do this little, I guess it was not necessarily a songwriter showcase, but it was a showcase at this restaurant, this rooftop bar. It was amazing. And at that show, I met a guy who the following year decided to put on the show at the House of Blues. So it's just an example of how like the connections that you meet or the people that you meet, you never
Hmm.
know what opportunities you get to
Yeah.
experience together. So the
Hmm.
House of Blues show, It was incredible. He said, "Hey, I met you last year at the NAMM show. We did the showcase and thought you're really good. I'm putting on a show this year at the House of Blues." And I was like, "Oh, it's amazing." And then through that, now I know, a few other bands that played that show who I still keep in contact with. And honestly, if it weren't for the pandemic, we probably already would have been,
Hmm.
touring together. At least, I
Yeah,
probably would have gone up there and done a show. They would have came down here and we would have done a show. So it's just cool to have those connections with people all across the country and be able to still
yeah,
have opportunities with them.
yeah. And I know you get like airplay in Europe, like different stations or online stations over there.
Yeah, that was kind of cool how it came out. There was a cool radio promotion that my publicist was telling me about, Sourceniak. He, kind of set me up with that. And yeah, it's they basically take your release and they stream it on all these independent stations, and
Yeah.
it did pretty well. I forget the stats off the top of my head. I probably should have written them down, but there was definitely a handful of countries and at least a few hundred streams in each of them.
Hmm.
So that was pretty cool. I know it for some reason. Australia is sticking out to me. I think it did pretty well on some of the
No,
indie
great.
stations in Australia, and I like that because I know people say radio isn't a thing anymore, but online radio is still booming. It
Yeah.
really is with streaming because people listen to music through the internet all the time now anyway. So that was pretty cool to have that. Yeah.
And do you ever get like people reaching out to you, like international, like people who like reach out to you that really like your music and they just kind of follow you on social media?
I do actually, yeah. I have a few people. I have a couple people in France who, I see them responding to my Instagram
Hmm.
stories, or if they see, me performing somewhere, they'll say, "Oh, you should come to France." In
Hmm.
fact, one guy from England, we actually talk pretty frequently, and he's always saying, "Oh, this new little pub opened up. You should." He's
Hmm.
like, "Oh, time." I was like, "Man, once it's like completely safe to travel again,
Yeah.
I'm there." So
Yeah.
this pandemic, it's like, so many opportunities could have happened, but yeah, it's and the people overseas, I mean, obviously, I love our country, but the fans seem to resonate more with the singer songwriter styles
Yeah.
as
Hmm.
opposed to over here. I mean, it definitely is strong over here too, but I notice the ones over there seem to be, every time I release a new song or write a new song and post a video of it, they're usually the first ones to say, "Oh, it sounds great. You did such a
Hmm.
great job." So.
Are you a songwriter that you like working on material like every day?
No, I wish. I dream to be. I like. In fact, if I showed you my to-do lists every
Hmm.
day, it's like songwrite more, songwrite more. My
Hmm.
goal list every year is like
Hmm.
write more music. I had this. I always set myself up with these little goals, and not even, oh, you have to write a full song by next week, but like you should at least for like 20 minutes a day, write down some lyrics or come up
Hmm.
with a new riff or just get your mind into the
Hmm.
habit of constantly creating. And at the moment, I have not been very good with that. But
Hmm.
again, my goal, I hope to just hopefully it clicks one day and I can just sit down and do it. And I don't know what keeps me from it. I get distracted. I always think, "Oh, well, I need to do laundry, so I should probably do that first." Like, "Oh, wait, hold on, before I sit down and songwrite, I gotta unload the dishwasher because it's there's
Hmm.
always something else, and that's my fault."
Let's some of the places you play live. Is it like within walking distance to where you live, or you have to commute like pretty far?
Lately, I've been pretty lucky. They've been
Uh-huh.
pretty close. I live pretty much in Clearwater, Florida,
Hmm.
so I've been getting a lot of gigs right along Clearwater Beach, which can't walk to them, but it's a closer
Hmm.
drive, unless it's season, and then the traffic is just
Hmm.
insane. And it's like
Hmm.
normally it's a 15-minute drive, but during
Hmm.
spring break season, it's like an hour. It's insane. But I used to, and I don't know why this was. I think I got in the circuits down in Anna Maria Island and Sarasota, Florida,
Hmm.
and I just played a lot down there. I want to say for like a year and a half, I felt like I was always in Bradenton and I was always in Sarasota.
Hmm.
But now but that's just because the circuits in my area were pretty much already taken. I was
Hmm.
still, getting my name out there. And like I said earlier, down there in, down south, they are a little bit more relaxed with their
Hmm.
music and their music schedule, so it's easier for me to kind of get in.
Hmm.
Whereas here, a little bit more, I guess, I don't know, competitive maybe is the
Hmm.
word. not in like a bad way.
Hmm.
Everyone's supportive. But luckily lately I haven't had too many far away shows. Every other week I played down in Siesta Key, and that's like an hour and a half. But I've had that residency for years, so I'm used to the drive.
And like, is there a large
Yeah.
community of singer songwriters like in Florida where you live?
Yeah, yeah, there really is, and especially with social media, we're
Hmm.
all able to keep in touch
Hmm.
with each other. And there are a lot of us, especially in the tourist areas,
Hmm.
St. Pete, Clearwater,
Hmm.
all those places. There is a pretty tight knit community. I during the pandemic, one of our, local, she's a singer songwriter, but she's also just an entrepreneur and just amazing person. She started doing these live streams of all the singer songwriters, and I would watch it, and they're all local people, but some of them I had never even heard of before. And I'm like, really? And she's like, oh yeah, this person plays over there every week. So I'm like,
Hmm.
wow, there's just so many of them.
Hmm.
Down in like Sarasota, I've seen less. It seems like most of the musicians there are, either retired or doing it for fun, or which is fine too. It's totally fine too. Island time.
Yeah. Do, do,
Yeah.
do you plan like maybe like with the resurgence or popularization of like vinyl? Do you think you might do like a vinyl release at some point of like your upcoming album?
Ah, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I do pretty well with CD
Hmm.
sales, so I think I should, if anything, maybe just have a handful of them, at
Hmm.
least something. I
Hmm.
definitely, I mean, I have a little bit of merch now. I have stickers and
Hmm.
wristbands, but yeah, I think having a vinyl would be really cool. That's definitely on the list.
And like you can do like and have, maybe have like some music videos made too.
Yeah, I do. In November of 2020, I released um, the official music video for my song Brave, which
Hmm.
is the title track for my 2019 album. I was a little bit, I was hesitant to do that one at first because I had released my single Theodora.
Hmm.
I was like, maybe I should make a music video for Theodora, but the problem is Theodora is such a different kind of song. I was like, I don't even know how I would even do a music video for that. So with Brave, it was a little bit easier because the content, I talk about the Pulse shooting, and I talk about, social
Yeah.
injustice,
Hmm.
and which in November 2020 and even right
Hmm.
now, there was a huge thing with the
Hmm.
protests and everything. So I was like, you know what? I think and Brave is the album that I'm most proud of. I think it's the most polished one that I
Hmm.
have. So I was like, well, I should have a video to at least accompany that album,
Hmm.
even if I'm releasing it a year and a half after the album came out. But I think the subject matter that what Brave is about definitely fit. It was more appropriate to release that, I think, than Theodora. So that was fun. And then the other music videos I have are all live recordings,
Hmm.
but professional. Like I
Hmm.
was hooked up to a soundboard, and
Hmm.
the sound was edited and mixed and everything.
Hmm.
Like I know with my trio, there's a video on my YouTube of us doing a cover of "Somebody to Love,"
Hmm.
and that's. I guess it's a music video. It is a music video, but we're all playing it live.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Hello, thanks for listening to the Erratic Dispatches podcast. We'll be back shortly after a brief break. And then, like with your songwriting, like, do you like, are you inspired by like people like you see like where you live in, like the environment that you live in Florida? Does that inspire your own songwriting, or do you draw a lot from stuff from the past?
I draw mostly from things from the past.
Hmm.
Yeah, or the way I feel about current
Hmm.
situations. My problem is a lot of my songs come from conflict, or
Hmm.
if I'm upset about something, or like I said earlier, if I'm just trying to express
Hmm.
something.
Hmm.
I it's kind of I try to find different ways to express myself though in my songs, because they end up sounding really complainy and like kind of cynical, and I don't really want to come off that way. Like I'm writing one now about things I notice in the music business, how it's can be kind of I don't know, fake or not
Hmm.
really
Hmm.
genuine. And that's, I guess, I shouldn't feel bad saying that. That's kind of a given. Any business, it's,
Hmm.
yeah. But, but most of my stuff is from conflict and things from the past, or things that I'm frustrated about. Um, and I try to, find other creative things to write about. Like if I see a movie that was funny or weird, I'm like, oh, I wonder if, I put myself in that character's shoes and like, what kind of song would they write? So, but it's mostly from personal experiences.
Do you ever like get inspiration from like when you're sleeping, like half asleep or from dreams, like just like melodies or lyrics ever appear like in just weird situations like that, just out of the blue?
Yes, I do. In fact, it's funny you brought that up because a few nights ago, it wasn't last night, I think it was the night before, I thought of this lyric and luckily I remembered it the next morning. But I was also thinking, I heard a melody in my head and I was sleeping, so I didn't want to get up and record myself singing it, but now I wished I would have. And sometimes I don't even hear just the melody. I'll hear like the full song, like guitars, drums, harmonies. I'll hear like I know in my head how I want it to sound, and it's always hard expressing that whenever I record it. But yeah, I have stuff. And sometimes lyrics pop in my head randomly, and I'll say them over and over again, and I'll put it to a melody. And then I think like, okay, I won't forget that. That'll be great. And then of course, an hour later, I'm like, oh, what was that? Oh my gosh. It's so frustrating. But I need to get in the habit of like, no matter what I'm doing, like get my phone and record myself, or else I'll forget it.
Like for like any like future projects you're working on, do you like have like dreams about like collaborating with certain musicians or like incorporating certain sounds that you didn't use before, or like certain melodies or certain genres?
Yeah. So a lot of my stuff has a tendency to kind of sound really poppy, almost bubblegum poppy. But again, I mean, I grew up in the late '90s, so again, my shirt, Free Britney. That's a lot I do. In fact, on my song Theodora, there was a harmony I came up with, and the engineer was like, "Oh," he's like, "Yeah, that's a good harmony." He's like, "It's very Britney-like, but yeah." And I'm like, "Oh." So I definitely fall into like this kind of bubblegum poppy, but that's just kind of the era that I grew up in. But I definitely have plans to go for maybe a more grittier sound, edgier sound, not so much a stripped down and acoustic, but a darker sound, and not so like da da da. I mean, but I like writing upbeat melodies. The subject matter isn't always happy. In fact, a lot of times it's not. Like Theodora complaining like crazy, but it's like da 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 da. It's like a super puppy song. So, but I do have plans to kind of shift my style more toward grittier, I think. Maybe a little more, bit more rock, I guess. Which is, that's a vague term, but.
And like, what do you find to be the biggest joys and challenges as a singer songwriter?
I guess, I mean, I feel like I have imposter syndrome a lot. Like I am a singer songwriter, but I'm like, am I really? Like, is my stuff, is it good enough? I guess that's the biggest thing too. And just being overly critical with my lyrics, it's like, I don't want to be too exposed and explain every single detail, but I also do because I want it to come from the heart and I want people to know how I feel about things. But then as soon as I write something like that, I immediately get embarrassed. I'm like, oh, that's so stupid. Like, no one cares about what I think about that. Like, why did I write that? So that's a challenge. And I guess just getting people to really, I don't know, take notice of your music. And I feel like, I used to share a lot of songs in the very early stages, and they would immediately get shut down by people because the song is in the early stages. So I guess I need to just remind myself that it's a process. When I write songs, it's not going to immediately sound perfect the first time. You got to work at it a little bit. So that's another challenge. Just, I guess, being patient and being humble, I guess.
And you mentioned like your brother, like, he was involved in the music industry before you. And then like, I guess he taught you, you mentioned about the business side. So I guess he taught you about like joining a PRO and like having complete control of your music, the ownership and everything.
Yep. He talked a lot about that. He did. Yeah. And his band, they kind of had some problems with stuff like, well, I'm say all that. I won't say everything. But he kind of let me know the real deal. Like, this is how it is. There are some issues that may arise in your career one day. So this is what happened to me. So they're definitely in that stuff. But, it's a business like anything else.
Yeah. And like, have there been anything unusual that's happened to you, like while performing live, that might have inspired some of your songs?
Um, Maybe there's definitely been a lot of weird things that have happened to me, mostly because I play at a lot of restaurants and bars and party
Mm-hmm.
places where people
Mm-hmm.
are
Yeah.
drinking and doing some things. So I definitely have some interesting memories. But as far as well, actually, yeah, my song Theodora, the single that I released last year, that was totally influenced by a guy at one of my gigs, and it was it was so funny. I had finished the gig and I'm sitting down at the bar waiting for my check. The manager is like, "Okay, let me go get it for you." And I'm sitting there, and he's like, just trying to hit on me. I don't know. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like, saying really vulgar, inappropriate, sexist
Mm-hmm.
things,
Mm-hmm.
and like, just being really rude and not being a gentleman. And then I kind of wanted to just ignore it. I'm not going to engage. I'm not going to start any conflict. So I just kind of grabbed my bag and I peacefully walked away. Like, I'm not going to get involved with this. And then he's calling after me, just so angry, like angry that I was walking away and then I wasn't like accepting his advances or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got so annoyed because I'm like, wait a second, I was sitting there minding my business. I was just sitting there not doing anything, and you're the one who was saying vulgar things to me, and I could have said something back, but I didn't. And how is this my fault? Like, why are you angry with me? You're angry with me because I didn't let you talk to me that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's your fault, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what that really started the whole Theodora song that one night. I was driving home just angry.
Wow. Do you think that that song might be on your next album?
Yeah, I do. I really like the way the single turned out, but I'm always curious. I mean, I see artists all the time. They have, the single version and
Mm-hmm.
then the
Yeah.
radio edit and then
Mm-hmm.
the album version.
Yeah.
So I was
Mm-hmm.
like, that'd be really cool to have it. I would totally do that, you know. Or I'll just take the same one and put it on there. But I'm curious. I think it'd be fun to kind of re-record it and see what it would sound like as an album version.
Yeah. So I guess like once things get better with the pandemic, you hope to
Mhm.
maybe do like a full on tour across the states.
Oh, I would love to. In fact, before the pandemic, there were I mean, I was getting not out of Florida, but it was all in Key West.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally, after like 2 years of sending messages and just trying, I finally had enough music that was polished. I had
Mm-hmm.
videos that were polished. I had photos. My little package was starting to
Mm-hmm.
come together. And I was starting to send that out. And I was finally getting responses saying, "Yeah, we'd love to have you. We're going to start booking in a couple months, so reach
Mm-hmm.
out to us then. We'll find a slot for you." And I was like, "Yay!"
Mm-hmm.
So it was I did it then. I could do it again. So
Mm-hmm.
and then again, the friends that I met at NAMM, we're all just itching to just see each other and play. So
Yeah.
my friends in the Brian Hansen band, they are up in Massachusetts, so they said, we'd love to do something. And then I've got another friend again in Anaheim, and
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, there's definitely plans for that. There's definitely
Great.
it's a matter of when.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
guess you like publicize your music on all major like social media. Do you use like TikTok or stuff like that?
I don't. I
Mm-hmm.
don't use TikTok, but it is on all the major. It is on Spotify and
Mm-hmm.
iTunes,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I use Instagram as my
Mm-hmm.
social media.
Mm-hmm.
So I do promote a lot on there, and then again, SoundCloud. SoundCloud is what I use, like I was saying earlier, for more of my like uncut, like
Mm-hmm.
sneak peek kind of stuff.
Okay.
Or yeah, but yeah. Someone last night at a gig was asking me why I wasn't on TikTok, and I just assumed anyone over 25 isn't on TikTok. I just assumed I'm 32, so I'm like, I don't know. That's not really my thing. But they were all saying I should do TikTok. But yeah, I don't. I guess I'd have to find a purpose. Maybe make it just original music, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'd have to really think about that.
And do you use like sites like what's it called, Patreon? To offer like certain perks to people, your fans. Like access to certain like rare stuff or you know.
Yeah, I know of Patreon, and
Mm-hmm.
I that thought has also crossed my mind. Again, I guess with feeling like maybe tapping into that imposter syndrome that I feel sometimes. I'm like, well, who would sign up for my Patreon? And I know I sound
Well,
very like self-deprecating, I guess, but I'm just like, yeah, I don't. Do I have a reason? I guess once I get further in this album, maybe then
yeah,
yeah, as kind of like a promotion thing.
yeah,
Yeah, I
you
think
should totally do that.
once we get it, like we get all the songs completely tied together, and once we get into the recording process, I think I should definitely do that.
Like with your music career, like where do you see yourself like 5 to 10 years from now? You hope to be touring all around the world, just like collaborating with amazing artists, building a
I mean,
huge catalog of music.
the most the thing I hope for most, I guess, is just that I can keep doing this as a
Yeah.
job, and
Hmm.
I just hope that I can keep releasing albums.
Hmm.
I don't ever want to stop releasing
Hmm.
albums and singles. I want to just have when I'm old, I just want to have a big collection of a bunch of music that I
Hmm.
wrote, that I'm
Yeah.
proud of, that exists in the world now
Hmm.
because I created it. That's my main hope. And then, of course, touring around would be fun. I mean, touring the world would be fun. But I never really had this desire. Like, none of this has ever been about fame for me. Like,
Hmm.
that's why when people say, why don't you go for The Voice? Or I'm like, yeah, but if you're like, oh, if you go for The Voice, it's like going to get you to where you want to be. And I'm just like, I don't really know if like stardom is what I really care
Hmm.
about and
Hmm.
want. I think I would like to have a nice, modest, loyal following.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
definitely more about quality and not quantity.
Hmm.
I don't want to have fans just because I released some song that's on the radio that
Hmm.
like is using the same four chords as that other song that's on the
Hmm.
radio or that other, what I mean? No
Hmm.
offense to anyone on the radio. I don't want anyone to hate me. I'm very nice. I like all styles of music. But I want to have fans that actually listen to the words and read the words and say like, "Wow, man, she described exactly what's going on in my life," or because that's what I did
Hmm.
growing up. I would
Hmm.
read through the lyric books and say like, "Oh, this is exactly how I feel." Like
Hmm.
Annie DeFranco, some of her stuff, and it's so refreshing when someone says the words that you couldn't find.
Hmm.
So I would like to have, I'd like to be touring and I would like to be popular enough to have people come to the shows and buy my albums. But it pretty much, the dream I think kind of ends there. I don't really have this desire to like number one song, tour the world,
Hmm.
stadium, Super Bowl.
Hmm.
I mean, that'd all be great, but that's not really in my head right now.
So you would feel more comfortable being an independent artist where you can have total control of your music instead of like being signed out to a major label where there's like they're coming after you, pressuring you to gear your music to a certain audience.
Exactly. It
Mm-hmm.
100%. I would be much more satisfied and happy and content if now if I sign to a major label and they let me do
Mm-hmm.
what
Yeah.
I do, then that's a different story. Or if like the tide shifts, I mean, music's go in and out of stuff. Music goes in and out of style all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Certain genres, like I know in the 90s, there was kind of a resurgence of that, like 1960 acoustic
Mm-hmm.
singer-songwriter
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like Alanis Morissette and Jewel, but then you have
Mm-hmm.
Joni Mitchell and
Mm-hmm.
Carole King. So if it would be cool if the tide kind of shifts back to
Mm-hmm.
that, because then I know, oh, well, my music is exactly what people are
Mm-hmm.
listening to
Yeah.
nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, it is on the radio. That then I'd be more willing to like, oh yeah, I want to take this farther.
Mm-hmm.
But I think right now I know I don't really fit on with the mainstream music, so I'm kind of fine just I mean, I'm not going to change. So I'm happy with doing the independent thing for right now. It's fun. It's fun. It makes me feel like like I'm running my own business, like I'm in
Yeah.
control.
Right.
It helps.
And what kind of advice would you give to somebody just starting out with like a teenager or even like a child who's like interested in doing their own original material? What kind of advice would you give to them?
I would probably give them the advice that my brother gave me.
Mm-hmm.
First and foremost, just focus on your craft, which I wish I would have taken his advice because I kind of was like focusing more again on like business
Mm-hmm.
stuff and like you got to sharpen the axe before you cut something. 'Cause you know what I mean? You got
Mm-hmm.
to get your little craft together. And that would be the first thing. And I know that's not as fun. Like doing scales aren't fun, doing vocal
Mm-hmm.
warm ups aren't fun. But focus on that first. Just make yourself good. And Steve Martin says that all the time. He says, be so good that they can't ignore you. And, he talks about that a lot. He's like, actors want to know how to get an agent, but they don't want to know how to act. So it's the same with some musicians. It's like they want to do all these things. And I was guilty of it too, so focus on your craft. But then also at the same time, you got to get your visual package together. You got to have your updated photos, and you got to have a nice bio, get a nice biography written out, get at least one really good, fully produced song out there. You know what I mean? Because when I first started out, the stuff I had online was like just a guitar, and I recorded it with my phone, and that's not a good representation. You don't want to send that out to someone. So for technical stuff, focus on your craft, and then get your package together because if you send your press kit to someone and it's like the photos are blurry or not, looks are a huge part of it, not just in a vanity kind of way, but you want to look professional. So that would be the best advice. And then of course, don't give up. Don't let people, I had this habit of, I think I mentioned this earlier, I'd play a song for someone while it was in its earliest stages, and they would criticize it, and then I'd say, okay, the song sucks, throw it away. But it's like, no, don't let someone criticize your work in progress. It's there was a term for it that I read. It's like premature judgments on things. Don't let people's premature judgments keep you from going forward, and just do what you want to do. Do your music. Take photos that you like, because that's what makes you, and that's what's going to be your selling point,
Like during the beginning of the shutdown last year, did you ever do like any like performances online?
Definitely, yeah. There was a girl here locally who was having people come out, and they were doing live streams with her because she had professional video equipment. So she was doing live streams, and then a few restaurants where I played before the shutdowns, they invited me to come out. And of course, the room is empty, and it's just like me and one other employee who's, and we're all masked up and everything, but they would stream from their restaurant. A few of the restaurants would like set me up outside, and they'd put up their laptop or something, and they would stream us. And that was kind of cool because it was like encouraging people to come out and get takeout, but maybe stand on the sidewalk and listen. And I had a lot of people coming up and tipping. My tip jar was like way far away from me, but I had people dropping money in, and that was kind of cool. It's made me feel like things were somewhat normal.
With your guitar playing, do you play one particular guitar, or do you sort of alternate with different types of models?
So mostly my favorite one to play is my Gibson Songwriter, but I try to avoid bringing that one out because I used to always bring it out, and it just sounded beautiful, but it was getting a lot of wear and tear, and that's definitely a higher end guitar. So I do have quite a few guitars. Right now I'm mostly playing my Taylor 214. That's kind of been Old Faithful. It sounds good in all kinds of rooms. I've fallen in love again with my Breedlove Passport. I had let a friend borrow it for a really long time because his guitar was giving him issues, and I had bought my Taylor, so I was like, oh, you just borrow the Breedlove, and he got it all set up, and he recently gave it back to me, and I played it at a show, and it's so much smaller. It has a little bit of a brighter sound, which I really like. So that's kind of been my go-to now. I need to do a little bit of work on it, but when I play out, I usually only stick to the same one or two guitars, but I do have a lot more at home that I've just had throughout the years, but they don't always sound as good when I play them out, or they're too expensive and I don't want to bring them out.
Do you play like both 6-string and 12-string guitars?
I just play 6-string. I would love to play 12-string. I don't really know if my guitar playing is skilled enough yet to really because I've heard some 12-string players that just play it like a guitar and it doesn't sound as good. There's so many other techniques you can use for 12-string, so I would definitely love to learn some of those and start playing a 12-string because it sounds beautiful.
Are you doing a show tonight?
I am not.
Okay.
Today, I am not tonight. Luckily, I actually had one scheduled for the day this afternoon. There's adorable nursing home where I play
Nice.
probably like once every other month, and it's only
Nice.
for an hour, and it's just the cutest thing. I play all kinds of songs that they love, and it's like they get so excited. They're like, "Oh, is the concert today?" I'm like, "Yeah,
Mhm.
the concert's today." But unfortunately, because COVID numbers are rising, they had to cancel it today.
Mhm.
So, and plus here in Florida, it's way too hot to do it outside. Because
Mhm.
during the
Mhm.
pandemic, I would go there and I'd play
Mhm.
outside, but it was in the spring and it was nice and cool. But right now, yeah, we wouldn't do that to people, those poor people.
Do you ever play at like schools?
I don't. I would
Mhm.
like to though.
Mhm.
A friend of mine, she's a touring musician and she does such an amazing job booking tours for herself. And a few times she did this college campus tour,
Mhm.
and I've been meaning. And again, you know, once things open up again and they're safe, I would love to pick her brain and see how she did that because that sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. And I think college kids would definitely appreciate the singer songwriter thing a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Hello, thanks for listening to the Erratic Dispatches podcast. We'll be back shortly after a brief break. Thanks again for listening to this Erratic Dispatches podcast interview with Frankie Raye. For this podcast episode on Anchor, I have pasted links in which you could purchase Frankie's autographed CDs for both of her albums, A Thing or Two About a Dream and Brave, off of her official website. And also there's a link for her Instagram page and also a link to check out her videos on her YouTube channel, including the official video for her song Brave. Thanks again for listening. I'll be back soon with a new episode. Take care. Bye-bye.